Good morning.
Good afternoon.
And good evening, wherever you are on this amazing planet of ours. But it's not so amazing if you're still in a fight.
Well, it's an amazing fight.
But they were wrong.
But they were wrong.
You still fighting with your parents? Oh, gosh.
I'm sorry.
It's a sure way to
that is
sabotage yourself.
That's right. That's the way to not be able to have a magical relationship.
Okay, now here's the thing. You might have answered no. I'm not fighting with them. But let's see. Let's investigate. Let's have some fun today. You okay to have fun today?
Yes, I am okay to have fun today.
It will require...
Only today, however.
But at midnight...
I don't know. No. I may not be awake.
Yes, but you might be. You never know.
I never know.
All right. So
this is a very interesting household. You never know what's going to happen.
You never know. Yeah.
Anyway, yeah, they were wrong. From a child's point of view, they were wrong.
Our parents were wrong.
Yes, because they dominated us. They made us do what they wanted us to do rather than what we wanted to do. They told us when we could go out and how late we could stay up and that we had to brush our teeth. And
I remember once my poor mother, if you as listeners, maybe your parent, maybe you are also a parent, maybe not. But I know as a child, I absolutely underestimated what it took to feed me multiple times a day, every day.
To clothe you, to house you, to pay for the oil to heat the house, to pay the mortgage, to earn a living, etc., etc.
I recall one time I had my girlfriend, Jill Wellborn, over, and she was doing a sleepover. And my mom had made tomato soup for dinner, something she'd made 1,000 times and I'd eaten and loved 1,000 times. But I decided I didn't want to eat it. And I remember my mom took me to the other room and said, look, you have a choice. Eat your dinner or I take Jill home. And it was an awful choice. It was, I really...
Sounds like the movie Sophie's Choice.
Only over, grilled cheese sandwiches and tomato soup. It was very funny how, in my mind, in a childish upset, for whatever reason, she was just so wrong.
Absolutely.
Today, let's listen. We have some guests here who started out... When we first knew them, yes. Now they're abnormal.
Right. They were normal. They said, oh, I'm fine with my parents. And when further discussed, it was disgusting how not fine with their parents they were.
And by the way, if you haven't, we don't promote our books that frequently, but there was a chapter that our first guest wrote called something like Love is in the Blintzes, about his recognition of what a brilliant, loving woman his mother was. It appears in Being Here Too, TOO, which has a lot of short stories written by different people in the transformation community. If you haven't read it or you haven't read it in a while, get out your copy or get a copy. It's an amazing, amazing book. And one of the reasons is because of our friend Eric.
And so let's invite him in.
Yes.
Hey, Eric, you there?
Hey, Eric.
You are there. Hi.
Hi, this is Eric in Brooklyn. And thank you for acknowledging that story. It was so great to write it. In the process of writing it, I really got in touch with my appreciation and my love of my mother, which is something I had neither of those things for a long time before then. And just because people probably don't know anything about her, my mom was a teacher and she was the mother of 3. I was the youngest. And I was convinced at one point that she was not very feeling, and she certainly was not emotionally available to me. Um, I I'm a lawyer as one of the things I do, and I'm familiar with the idea of putting things into evidence and keeping things out of evidence, meaning you can put certain things before the court to consider, whether it's the jury or a judge, and you can keep them from seeing certain things that might change the way they look at the case. And I had been doing that for years with myself and other people, meaning I had a point of view about my mom that she was a mean, unfeeling, emotionally unavailable person. God knows why. She's just one of those people. And I had evidence for that, and I was happy to share that evidence whenever I had the opportunity. Court was constantly in session, if you will. And by the way, in real life, once you try a case and there's a verdict, it's over. But in my court case of Eric versus Mom, that case was always available to be reopened and retried. And my experience of attending transformational seminars with Ariel and Shaya and participating through that, I began to see my part in creating a mythology. I had created a story about my mom that shockingly was not 100% accurate. I had kept things out of evidence. Things like all of the private cello lessons that she brought me to, paid for, drove me to things, drove me to all my theater rehearsals, attended all my shows, came up to my college, which was a 4-hour drive from where my parents lived, to see me in productions like Macbeth. Yeah. By the way, a good production which starred someone who later became a film star. And I was good in it, but I mean, it was a schlep to see a pretty dark play. And I won't list all the plays and concerts and things. I'm sure people who are listening have their own experiences of those things, but I had conveniently forgotten a lot. And that, by the way, is not to mention like what Ariel and Shaya talked about earlier, which is, oh, she fed me, clothed me, kept me alive. Those kind of things.
Little things like that.
I remember, Eric, when you delivered to us your chapter, and I haven't read it in a long time, but I'm still recalling how you wrote that she came to one of your plays, something probably off Broadway or off Broadway at the time, and how she pulled you down because you were significantly taller, and she whispered in your ear, "You are the very best one." That is not emotionally distant or anything. I see you tearing up.
Yeah.
Yeah. All of that evidence that you excluded suddenly poured back into the vessel Eric and was available to you to be touched by and moved by. And I find that very moving myself to see it in you, to hear it in you.
Thanks. By the way, it was not a thing in time. I've often heard you and Shaya talk about transformation happening sort of out of time or unrelated to time. When I started to see the reality of the relationship or the reality of her in our relationship, it came flooding back instantaneously, and the past filled in. It didn't take a long time to download. It filled in really quickly. And it also allowed me, my mom was still alive at that time, and I made a priority of going to visit her. She was living in Florida at the time. And I spent time visiting her and really just making those visits about her, which was unusual for me and I think a lot of children probably, I'll make a crazy assertion that when we go and visit our parents, even as adults, we tend to make it about us. And so I was interested in what she wanted for dinner, and because she couldn't drive and she had someone staying with her, I went and got Chinese food and brought it back, or things like that, or blintzes, which I talk about also in the story. And it made our time together toward the end of her life really sweet and easy. I was not stressed. I've had experience of other people, both in my family and in other families, who were in the fight with their parents, and their parents passing was incredibly stressful for them. And obviously I grieved, but it was not, it was a far easier experience than the experience of people I've seen who were still in a fight with their parents.
Well, the people that are in the fight with their parents, when their parents leave, they got nobody else to blame. See, that's the problem. That's what keeps them crazy and incomplete, because they've been telling a lie about who their parents were. And the lie was not a current lie, it's an old lie. See, memories were recorded by us at the time we had the memory. So if you have a childhood memory of how bad your parents were, well, that's the memory of a child, not the adult that you've become, unless you still embellish and insist upon blaming your parents for your life. Well, then that becomes your life, but it's based in a child's temper tantrum.
Well, additionally, and we haven't talked about this in some time, there are also false memories. And I recall when Shai and I went to work in California many, many years ago, we were hired by a company that made films. And the person who was the main owner told us all about how humiliating it was when his father came home.
Who happened to be a heart surgeon, came home, and the kid had done such a poor job of mowing the lawn that the father, after castigating him for it, that's the right word, isn't it?
Yes, admonishing, saying you did such a bad job.
Right. The father had to do the job over himself.
So after working for this company for some time, one of the junior partners flew in from Canada because it was a
Canada-based operation. It
was this fellow's younger brother, and he sat down and promptly told us the exact same story as if it had happened to him.
So we had two of the exact same stories,
same cadence,
same everything. So same information. So either they were twins and experienced it,
or their dad had done it more than once.
Exactly the same, however, or we finally got to the bottom of it. It was something their older sister told them
that she had seen happen that neither of them recalled, but they adopted it
as though it was a reality.
And they began to mirror her fight with her father. So when you said earlier, Eric, I started to see my part in it. Normally we're like, your part is all your part. Well, it's true. Once you've adopted it, once you've collected the evidence, that's true. That's on you. Except for, I recall you just said you were the younger or the youngest of three. And sometimes.
And so if your upset sister or upset brother had told you about how unfair mom was, now mom is unfair from your point of view, whether you realize it or not. You've been dipped in a dye of someone else's upset that is now living in you, and as though it was your reality.
Start looking for it.
That's right.
I was extremely, and probably still am, very manipulatable And when you have an older sibling, I'm confident that they could have manipulated me a little bit. Just a little bit.
Or a lot of it. I mean, I perhaps it wasn't the case with you, but I certainly looked up to my older siblings, particularly the one, my middle sister, Mary, who was 2.5 years older. My sister, Kathy, was 5 years older. My aunt, who lived with us because her parents had died. So she lived, and so she was a number of years older. So it was like 4 of us in the household for a significant time. And I really wanted to be them. I looked up to them. So I hung on their every word. If my sister Mary said, "Oh, poof, what are you wearing that for?" That was it on that outfit. I mean, there were things that were very influential.
Right. Right. I do want to mention, if it's all right, my father had passed quite some time before all of this. And I had, in my mind, thought I'd gotten along pretty well with my father. But I still saw during this process, when through seminars, as I explained, and seeing the shift in my relationship with my mom, I had that shift with my dad too, even though he was gone. And it will sound strange to some, but I have a great relationship with my parents, and they are both passed on. And my father had passed on in 1997, and I felt a shift in my relationship with him in such a way that I just feel great about him. And yeah, go ahead.
When was your mother's passing?
My mom passed fairly recently. I was after the pandemic, like in 21, I think, at the end of 2021.
And when did your relationship with her shift?
It was probably a couple of years before she passed. It was certainly after I started attending seminars, which was like 2009. So within several years of that. So yeah.
Yeah. And when did your last marriage take place?
Wow. Boom. For people who can't see this, my head just exploded. 2015, in a good way, meaning, so I met my wife, Holly, in 2009, first seminar. We were not in relationship. We were friends. But then when we were both available, we started dating at the end of 2013. And we moved in together at the end of 2014, and we got married in 2015.
Interesting, isn't it?
What's nice is
what's interesting is your previous marriages, because you had 2. Yes. I don't know the relationships you had in between.
If there were any.
There were.
But as long as you're at war with your parents, and you would create relationships that mimicked that type of relationship.
You know, I've been attending seminars, like I said, since 2009, and I thought bottom line is I just saw it more clearly now, Shia, when you just said that. It was like when you have an old television set and you'd have the knobs to adjust to make it a little clearer. I mean, people don't know what this is like, but trust me, years ago, you have to go up to the television and adjust the knobs. And it's like we just adjusted the knobs and the picture got much clearer. Yes, those relationships definitely were different than my current relationship.
Well, they were doomed from the start because your model for relationship was based in contention.
Absolutely.
The other thing, you begin to require the people in your life to become like that which you are incomplete with, because life begs for completion. So if you don't complete it in one area, you're going to recreate it currently, so you have an opportunity once again. So it's been so lovely to see the continuation and the journey of your relationship with Holly, in that it is so distinctly rich as opposed to contentious like your previous
and we could blame it on Hal, but I don't think so. You see, it really has to do with you and your giving up a child's battle with a ghost, because the story is mythology and it never really happened that way.
Yeah.
And, kids say my parents were mean or nasty to me. They don't look and see what they did to provoke their parents' behavior.
I know there are, and you've probably, as a lawyer, and since you work with people who are incarcerated because you're hired by Pennsylvania,
no,
not
it's
Pennsylvania, Massachusetts
but they're both Commonwealths.
Commonwealth of Massachusetts, to make sure that people have gotten a fair shake and you go in. And so I'm sure you have dealt with a significant slice of people who grew up in really unfortunate situations where their parents might have done their best, but they were still had unfortunate
the parents
behaviors.
Were raised in unfortunate environments, and they passed on those unfortunate traits into their current living situation. I mean, you can't change the world that rapidly. But you can only change the world by allowing yourself to be okay being you. That can change your universe, and your universe bumps up against other universes. And so that's the way you change the world, by being kind to yourself rather than punishing yourself or your parents for what came before. Or
siblings, since we mentioned them.
Yeah, for whatever came before, because it had to happen that way. If it could have been different, it probably would have been.
Yeah, it's funny. I had a really great conversation with my sister just yesterday, which came out of the blue. It was really lovely.
And a few years ago was impossible.
That's accurate. I won't bore people with the details, but let's just say that is a relationship that has transformed.
Yeah, well, but what, Eric, what relationship of yours hasn't transformed?
Yeah, I can't think of one.
We didn't speak at the beginning of this episode about listening, but it's clear that Eric is listening, and it's transformed his ability to relate to his life. That he and his sister now relate. He doesn't go into it as if he knows who she is, and it's like, oh yeah, it's so-and-so calling, how she is. And even here, he's listening in a way that he hears new things, and instantaneously his world opens up.
I flashed on time last year that Ariel and I went down to North Carolina, and we were walking along a promenade down there, and we saw a woman in a pickup truck or a van, I don't remember which, but it had a Texas Rangers.
A Cowboys logo.
Oh, Dallas Cowboys logo on it, on the side of the car. And we got to talking with her, and she was very pleasant. And she said, so what is it that you do? And we said, we lead seminars. And she said, well, if it isn't religion-based, I don't want to hear about it.
I've got it. It's done. My religion is all. So unless you're a part of that, I don't want to hear about it. So it was a very interesting.
Yeah. So we could either talk to her about what she already believed to be true and her reality as it was, no challenges, or we could shut up because she wasn't going to listen to anything we said.
So and we didn't want to change her point of view.
No, but her point of view was such that I don't want to hear any point of view other than my point of view. See, listening allows you to discover other possibilities. But if you're completely invested and righteous about your point of view. In other words, my parents sucked and I'm never giving that up. Well, we're the wrong people to hang out with.
When you listen to somebody, it infuses everything that's important to you, even if it is a religious-based background, with meaning and depth and color. And there's just something so lovely.
Well, if you listen, you discover life newly in your listening.
Thanks for coming today and sharing your perspective. I really
absolutely enjoyed you
in total, but I love that you started out with that you're a lawyer and that you were really good at collecting evidence and excluding evidence, because it's such a perfect metaphor for how we often do things.
I don't think we said at the beginning of today's episode that we finish each other's sentences.
We do. And by the way, you did earlier, and I know there was a listener, because I can tell, even though we haven't released this yet, when you finished my sentence about the guy who thought his father had berated him.
Oh, yes.
I know somebody was like, let her finish. I was so happy when you stepped in. When I started it, I paused, figuring that you could pick it up and articulate it even better than I. And I love that we finish each other's sentences. What a team.
Me too.
Thank you for having me on today. It was such a privilege to hang out with you guys.
Hey, thank you for your appreciation.
And please give our love to Holly.
Yes, please give up.
Excellent. It's that time.
The time for what?
Our listener feedback spotlight.
What is that?
Well, I'm so proud of the people who listen to this show. And now we get to hear from one or more of them about what's happening in their lives with transformation by listening to this podcast and
what they've discovered about life, what they've discovered about their lives, that they are experiencing fun in their lives.
And that they want to share it with you.
Yeah.
This is Christina from Bonn, Germany. And coming to these seminars and listening to the podcast of Ariel and Shaya, Kane, it always allows me to take a brain break, and it allows me to fall into my center and listen and breathe simply.
Do you want to have well-being with consistency? Connect with people all over the world from the comfort of your own home at Ariel and Shire's lively interactive Living Made Easy virtual seminars. Join any of their 2-hour online events or take a deep dive into the magic of being you at a virtual weekend seminar. Come on, let's connect. Find out more and register at transformationmadeeasy.com.
We invite you to our upcoming seminars. We have the 2-hour variety virtually, Living Made Easy seminars. The next one is this Saturday,
June 1st.
Then there's Monday evening,
June 3rd.
And then for those of you in the European community, we have our evening seminar
on Tuesday, June 4th.
Just letting everybody know that Saturday, June 1st is the beginning of our Saturday summer hours. We're starting an hour earlier than we have been doing in the spring and winter. It's 8 a.m. Eastern time, so it's 8 to 11. In European time, it's 1 in the UK and 2 in the Central European time. So just giving you the heads up. Our next weekend seminar is also virtual. It's June 8th and 9th. The theme is magical relationships. You deserve a magical relationship with yourself, most primarily, and from there, all follows. Our next in-person seminar,
Creativity and Intuition. That's going to be August 2nd, 3rd, and 4th in Jersey City, New Jersey, I
yes,
believe.
We're renting a beautiful room at the Performing Arts Center, New Jersey Performing Arts Center. It's a Friday night, Saturday, and Sunday. It will be fun. It's also just so lovely to get together with people in person. And speaking of in person, Costa Rica 2025 is available
open
and filling. And
people are signing up.
You are very, very welcome.
I might even sign up.
Okay. Do you want to sign up for our newsletter too?
Oh, I might as well.
While you're at it. Let's take our next guest.
Okay.
By the way, you can find everything at transformationmadeeasy.com. And come on, Corrine. Welcome to being here. Tell people where you're zooming in from.
Hi, this is Corrine. I'm calling in from, or zooming in from Manhattan.
Yes, welcome.
Yeah. Nice to be here. It's great to be here.
Wasn't that fun listening to Eric?
I was just, you just took the words out of my mouth. It was so much fun to listen to Eric, and so many things popped up for me as he was speaking. It was like a lot of, sometimes we talk about like you have your own folder. I went back into the folders of relationships with my parents and sibling and husband. It was really just terrific. So it's great. Thank you.
I love it. I have a feeling a lot of the listeners are getting flashes of earlier memories or times or things that they've held on to. And if that's you, if as you're listening, you have a story pop up, something you told yourself or something you recall, see if you can keep bringing your attention back to the conversation with Corrine. There'll be plenty of time for that to unfold later. And if it needs to unfold, it doesn't have to. You can actually listen.
Well, here's the thing. There's absolutely nothing you can do about what you did in the past. I heard Eric talking about visiting his mom when she was elderly in Florida, and I thought of visiting my mom, and I didn't do it enough from my point of view, because you can never do it enough from your point of view, or you do it too much from your point of view. But it doesn't matter. No matter, you compare your life, your experience to anybody else's, you always end up on the short end of the stick, because you could have only done your life up until this moment exactly as you have.
I would say,
you think you should have done it differently.
I would say that's one of the things I love most about transformation when you talk about it. Before I met you guys, and I've been attending seminars since 2003, so it's a while. And in those days, I was very upset about what I had done or not had done, and not forgiving. And, I would really, really hold on to that. And as you were saying that, Shaya, it occurred to me that after I met both of you, my relationship with my parents transformed. Like, I went from distrusting my father, not liking to even speak with him or be with him. And I now have really nice, good feelings about him and appreciate him. And when he passed away, I didn't have those feelings of incompletion. I felt as if we completed our relationship and continue. I like Eric mentioned, I too still have conversations with both of my parents. It's like they don't really leave. They're there in my heart, really.
Sweet.
Yeah.
As you're talking about the early days, when we first met you, your face kind of morphed into recalling who you were then. You were so much harder on yourself back then. I really think that, particularly as people are listening, I imagine a lot of the folks who are listening have listened to multiple episodes and maybe have listened to this podcast for years. And I suspect we're all getting easier on ourselves. And if we're not, then we're probably just upset. Because you got a text today from somebody who was very upset a week ago. She was getting ready for surgery, really upset. We had a very brief conversation with her, and everything is easy and simple and organized, and she's in sync with the people who are doing it. And isn't life fabulous? She recognized her upset, and now she likes herself and everyone around her. When she was upset, she was fighting with herself and everyone around her. Yeah.
Yeah, I get it. I get it. One of the things about my dad that when he was alive, my father really loved our house. We have a house by the beach in New Jersey. And in those days, I guess I just didn't agree with anything he did or said. So to me, it was like, big deal, it's a house. Well, here we are many, many years later. And when he passed away, we ended up buying the house and renovating it. And I'm so proud that we're taking care of it. No, this is not exactly this, but he would be so happy to see how much we love it and how we're taking care of it. And we still laugh, like there's a boiler in the basement that is, when we bought the house 12 years ago, it was old. And, a contractor came through and he goes, this hot water heater is old. You should get rid of it. And I'm thinking, it's my dad's. He bought a really good one and I don't want to get rid of it till it breaks. It's like, it's still, he'd be so happy to know that water heater is still going. And what's really touching is that before I met you, I really did not have good conversations with him. But once I met you and got over my fight and started, we had that, I had said I was in therapy for 5 years. I don't have a problem with my dad. And then you started helping me understand that I was in a huge fight with him and with men in general. And so once I started speaking to him, I said to him one day, because he used to always participate, like in those $1 million like consumer surveys when they send him to the house, send your name in and you'll be in $1 million sweepstakes. And so I said, Dad, what would you do if you got the $1 million? And he said, I'd fix up this house. And I had always assumed the house was the way it was, and he wanted it that way. It never occurred to me that he had aspirations to do more. It was
He invested in you and your sister because you were more important than the house.
Yeah.
Which
Yeah. And my mom, my mother too.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's really true.
I liked what Eric said earlier about how oftentimes we hold our parents as our parents. They're people in relation to us rather than these human beings who have friends and aspirations and families and wider interests that aren't only centered on us. And it's really sweet that you asked him what he'd do with it and listened, like you were actively interested in him, not in him relating to you, but him as a individual.
Yeah. And when you said about he had friends, and he had other people that liked him. So there was a gentleman who was like a couple years older than me, but lived around the corner from us. And after we bought the house, I got to see him and he understood that, my dad had passed away and we bought the house, et cetera. And so he said to me, I really miss your father. He just loved my dad. He goes, he used to go to the town meetings and he would stand up and he would let them know what he was thinking. And now that I think about it, that's what I want to do too. Like now that I'm living in the town of Long Branch, I'm starting to attend the meetings and I've always got like ideas of what we could do and what I want to say. So I guess the apple doesn't fall far from the tree.
Yeah. And the thing is, most apples think the tree is the wrong tree. They think they should come from an oak tree, not an apple tree.
That's very true, Shia. Because when I first met you, I really didn't think they were my parents. I thought that somehow I had been switched at birth. I belonged to a different family. And I also wanted to be brought up by the parents of my best friend, Laura Sharfstein.
Now, wait a second. If you look at Laura's life now, would you really have preferred to have her parents?
No. And I've met her.
Like that when I was a kid, who I thought his family was the perfect family. And now that I've lived my life and I look at that family and how much serious, trouble, pain they suffered through, are still suffering through, as far as I can tell. When I was a kid, I had a kid's point of view. And my kid's point of view was theirs was the perfect home.
Yeah, it's true. Absolutely.
This may be a false memory on my part, but I am recalling way back when we led courses at the Village Community School early on in your attendance with us. So it was still in the early 2000s. You standing up to talk about how you had the idea that your dad was an uninvolved parent, and how a girlfriend of yours at the time had mentioned how much she loved the birthday parties your parents and that your dad had thrown for you. And it was like that whole memory did not exist until she brought it back for you, because it was outside the current story you were telling yourself.
It wasn't in the evidence, as Eric said. It proved you wrong about your dad.
That's true. I did not look at that evidence. I had forgotten about it. And the person who brought it up, ironically, is Laura, the person who I had always looked up to and admired her family.
Well, she was looking at your family and admiring your family, thinking she should be brought up in your family.
Yeah, she wanted the birthday party. She didn't get the birthday parties like we had. Or even, I remember my father was always behind the camera, always taking pictures. And as a kid, I was like, oh, there he is again, taking more pictures, as opposed to appreciating the fact he was documenting what was going on, and someday we would really love them. But he also made these amazing films where he did stop start, and he would undo the upholstery on a couch. So the couch would be completely made, and then he would take it apart, and it would look on film as if the couch was undressing. And he would play those. And my sister and I would be like, there he goes again. And now, we didn't enjoy it. We're like, oh, the couch again. Yeah, and now look back, and it's like, it was so creative. It was pretty brilliant.
Well, look, you're a very creative person. When we met you, you had your own eyeglass line that you designed and went to China to get them to make the parts for your glasses, to make your glasses. You did all that. That was amazing. And it was very creative.
I know. I see that years later, that there was that connection. Absolutely.
It's really lovely, Corinne, talking with you today, and also talking with Eric. And it's so easy for me also to take a trip down memory lane. I'm just so grateful for transformation, the ability to recognize, those three principles of instantaneous transformation. When you recognize this moment is unfolding exactly as it is, which is the second principle. You can only be exactly as you are. And anything you resist, you get stuck with. And anything you see without judging completes itself in an instant. And it's so special to not have to go through life with the burden of stories that anyone did it wrong. Because we've all done exactly what we've done. We couldn't have done it any differently. And you know it because you didn't. You did it exactly as you did. And anything you see without judging completes itself.
If you blame that on anybody but yourself, or even blame yourself, Because see, in this moment, Corinne, you cannot be sitting differently than you are in this current moment. And that means one of your hands needs to be pressed against your
Well, you're
face.
also zooming in from Manhattan. You can't possibly be at your house by the beach.
Right. No,
Your hand, but in the moment that your hand was there, that's where it was. See, our lives are on rails. And the problem is the things we don't want are the things we keep in our lives by resisting them. So to the degree you resisted your family or lack of same runs your life.
yeah. That's what I learned from you right away. Because the first time, I don't know if you remember this, but the first time I attended a weekend seminar, it changed my life. Like those 3 days were magical. And I wanted more. That was me. I was like, oh, this is so great. I've got to see them again. And so I set up a session with you, like a private session right away, because it's like, now I need more. And I came with a list of what I wanted to accomplish. And you basically said, put the list away, which was brilliant, but I didn't understand at the beginning. And I put the list away. And then you started talking to me about my relationship with my father and how it could impact my relationship with men. And it just really opened up my eyes. And I look back at like my total life has totally transformed. And I'm really grateful because it wasn't just in one area. I came to you because I wanted help with business, and then boom, like business relationship.
I admire that about you, Corinne. First of all, for somebody to have a hunger for transformation is tough at first because they don't know what it is. So you come with
it's not understandable. That's the other thing. And when we met you, you were normal and you wanted to understand everything.
And of course you came with a goal. You wanted to, your business was floundering at the time and you wanted it to do well. So I admire anybody who uses any excuse to come and discover what's possible. But then to have the courage to keep looking, even if you don't understand how it works. And there's something so courageous about that and so wonderful about that.
Yeah, so you just reminded me. What you had said to me that night was, play a game. Start paying attention to when you think of your parents and your father in particular. Just watch. See when that comes up. And so then, like the next day or 2 days later, I'm in my office and I need to do something I didn't want to do. And I was like, I got to call my parents. And then I thought, wait a minute, this is what you're talking about. Like when something uncomfortable would face me, my father and my mom would pop in my head to distract me until I became aware of it.
Yeah, and then you could stop using them
as an excuse for not doing what you didn't want to do. For
non-productivity and upset.
Exactly.
Fun being with you today.
Yeah.
Really a treat.
Yeah, it's really great to see you both, and I'm enjoying this very much.
Yeah, thank you.
We're enjoying you, Corinne.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
You could share this podcast with your friends. Not to help them because nobody needs help, but it's kind of fun to discover there are whole other possibilities. And if you haven't subscribed to our newsletter yet, I would do it. Our newsletter has blogs, videos, information, announcements about upcoming events. It's so rich. You can find out about all of that at transformationmadeeasy.com. You can subscribe to this on your favorite podcast app. Whatever works for you. Next week's episode.
Yes.
It's listening, a full-time occupation.
So come on back.
And don't miss
being here.